Apparently I'm not. Good morning. I am Melissa Kutcher. I'm the Executive Director for Technology First. I'd like to extend a very warm and special welcome to each one of you here with us today for our 14th annual Taste of IT. Please join me in thanking our sponsors, Cincinnati State, Cadre Checkpoint, OKTA, and then all of our bronze sponsors that you would have seen on the slides. Also to our annual partners, ATC, Affidence, CareSource, Cincinnati Bell, Google, Round Tower, University of Dayton, Wright State University, and Uptime. We couldn't do this without your support. Thank you. So now let's get started. Anderson has spent a large majority of his 20-plus year career in the technology space, specifically around data integration and analytic solutions. In his current role, Anderson is the Director of Enterprise Data Strategy and Services for the Kroger Company based in Cincinnati. Brandon is a data professional working across many technologies to deliver cohesive data platforms for analytics. His journey has led him to develop solutions for data warehouses, operational analytics data stores, and most recently, a data management platform following the data lakehouse model. Join me in welcoming Anderson Muse and Brandon Bird, the Kroger Company, as they discuss building a data lakehouse in Azure at Kroger scale.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks again to Technology First for this opportunity. Super excited to take everybody through our journey here. Let me go ahead and bring up my presentation. All right. So as a brief introduction, at Kroger, we have undertaken a cloud journey here over the last couple of years. We are diving deep into Azure and have spent the better part of the last year looking at our best way to both migrate compute out of our data centers as well as stand up net new greenfield solutions in Azure. So Brandon has been my key architect in really driving that forward. He is way brighter than me, which is why it was super important for him to jump in and add a ton of context here. We have learned a lot in the last year and really wanted to share that experience with everyone here. We are in the dev track, but I would say that our solution really spans both development and data. And before I get into too many details, I have to use the obligatory marketing slide. So this is a little bit dated. I think most folks in the Ohio Valley are familiar with Kroger, but when we look at how do we implement solutions in Azure, in the cloud, in a repeatable fashion, this is the scale that we operate at. So again, I think we're over 2,800 supermarkets now. I think we're well over 500,000 associates with COVID here over the last year. So this is massive, massive scale. And we have an organization that, it's all focused on operations. When you have a supply chain as big as ours, when you have to execute at a store level, when you have to deliver and excite our customers, there is a lot that goes into that. So this is what we have to tackle as we get into Azure is how do we build solutions that operate at this scale that you can set your watch to. So before I go too far into the weeds on how we actually built this in Azure, the biggest thing to call out is, we've adopted the data lakehouse terminology, and I want to acknowledge our friends at Databricks for a lot of the materials here. I mean, they've kind of coined this phrase, data lakehouse. This is an evolution beyond your traditional data lake. And when we look at the challenges we have at Kroger and what we need to achieve, we have run the gamut through the years on approaches and platforms. So we've got, our enterprise data warehouse, which runs on an MPP IBM stack. We've got several Netezza environments, again, to operate at massive scale. We've got a massive Cloudera Hadoop environment. When we ventured into Azure, it was how do we do this better? And are there advancements in the technologies that are going to change our outcomes or accelerate our outcomes? So Databricks is an area we have leaned in heavily. I call out some of the key aspects of the data lakehouse here. So some key things to call out. The Delta framework that Databricks has allows for ACID compliance, which is absolutely critical when we are delivering refined data sets to our end users. So again, making sure that they don't have to deal with the complexity of the underlying file structures, that when something is written, that they can trust that they get one and only one version of that particular record. Absolutely critical for advancing our work around analytics. Obviously, the ability to deal with structured and unstructured data, in a modern, both digital and brick and mortar world, you're going to have a variety of, of data that flows through your overall ecosystem. So it's absolutely critical that you've got a flexible infrastructure to deal with that. And the next point there around streaming, we are moving beyond the batch world. And I know that that doesn't seem like a massive leap, but we're an organization that, we've got systems that are 40 years old in some areas. So as we've, run through our digital evolution, you still have those as anchors that you need to overcome. We are getting much, much better as we stand up new capabilities and implement new solutions at looking at near real-time processing to make sure that we're driving analytics at the time that matters. So again, overall capabilities, we work in an environment where a lot of our business users make decisions based on reports. So standard reports, we probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000, 30,000 reports that we run our business by across all of Kroger. So the challenge with that, if you run your business by reports, then you are effectively answering questions that you already know how to ask. If COVID has taught us nothing else, it's that events can happen that can completely turn your overall ecosystem on its ear. So a great example I'll use is our supply chain. We have many, many, many reports that our business runs by, and our focus for years was how do we optimize the movement of product from our warehouses to our stores to get data on the shelves for our customers. Seems simple enough. COVID hit, people started, hoarding groceries, buying as much as they could on every trip, which created out of stocks in our stores. So as you start to chase that problem further up the supply chain, we ran into situations like, paper products where there were shortages in the overall supply chain. When you run your company by reports, you either have to have reports that have already asked and answered that question, or you have to quickly pivot to be able to get the data that you need to go do that analysis to produce those outcomes. So this is where we really hit the accelerator on our overall data management platform. The goal was to get all of this data to a place that we could go do ad hoc analysis. We could trust the quality of the data. We could do very light curation to make it useful, but also make it consistent. And these capabilities are what we really baked into the data management platform ecosystem. So everyone has the ability to tap into this across all of our business areas. Again, it's Databricks, Spark SQL. So there is a learning curve to do this type of analysis. However, as analyst teams have come up that curve, we're able to then create new insights and ask and answer questions in a different way. So we have looked at an overall ingestion framework. How do you get data from our various systems into the environment to that lightly curated state? we are following very much a DevOps model. So as we move to the cloud, we want to do things differently. We want to think about how do we build that consistency, that recoverability, that reliance for everyone that uses this platform. Obviously, this is a massive data ecosystem that we need to be able to set our watch to. So creating those monitoring and alerting capabilities and making sure that we've got full observability across that platform is absolutely critical. And then we've got all these net new benefits as we start to think forward about the flexibility of the services in Azure and how we can actually leverage those services to make this event driven, to be able to trigger actions off of activities within the platform. And the other thing there, I mean, obviously, when you operate at Kroger scale, in our traditional world, you would make massive investments in capital, in infrastructure, simply to do the basics. And the beauty of the cloud is it is an expense model, and you have to be careful, but it allows us to go provision what we need and scale to the size that Kroger operates in. So the overall ecosystem, and I'll buzz through this a little bit before handing it over to Brandon to get into the weeds. When we look at the overall ecosystem, we've got all kinds of information that is flowing in. So again, our friends at Deloitte that we've partnered with in this overall journey have pulled together some really awesome visuals. So we've got third-party data flowing in, obviously our operational data in the company, IoT data from all of our sensor networks, clickstream, mobile data that's going to flow in. We've got to get this into a place where we consolidate it. And again, the goal for us as an organization to move us forward is to get out of the static report view of the world. We're making an investment in Databricks because that is going to be the way that we can start to drive out advanced analytics. And if you start down at the bottom there on the kind of core constituent user groups, over on the left, the data lake enablement, advanced analytics enablement, we're going to have these capabilities, and we've got the basics in place at this point to really unleash our analyst teams, and not your traditional SQL writers, but folks that are going to get into the weeds with Python and R. And we've got to, drive that forward, get more advanced insights, more prescriptive insights, and then drive action off of those activities. That should not preclude us from being able to deliver our traditional BI and dashboards and standardized reporting. That is still enabled through this model, but we've got Databricks in the middle that enables us to build out that, to simplify the complexity, but allow flexibility for core delivery across the overall ecosystem. So again, from over on the right, the data ingestion, first thing out of the gate, we got to get the data there and make it a simple, repeatable way to do it. The overall lake and aggregation, we've got curation layers in that lake. Each curation layer has a purpose. It's standardized, it's consistent. And then the consumption patterns on how we're going to leverage that. Obviously, you get into the cloud, you got to worry about egress. You got to worry about cross-platform integration. Security is a major thing that needs to be a consideration as you stand up new services across your overall Azure ecosystem. So lots and lots to consider. And then when you try to implement this in an automated DevOps way, it just adds more complexity to the considerations. Brandon, with that, I'll turn it over to you to talk more about the specific design here.
Thank you, Andy. On the left, you'll see a chart of all the Azure services that we're using as part of the data management platform. As many of you are aware, cloud developers do not grow on trees. Also, finding cloud developers that have an understanding of Kroger data are almost non-existent. So part of our challenge was early on finding the right professionals that understood these cloud services and pairing them up with the people at Kroger who understood this data. When we brought all these people together last August, we put everybody in a room, probably some of the smartest people that I've ever talked to, and constructed a map of how all these services work together. So each new service comes with some of the concerns that Andy had already mentioned. How is it used? What does it cost? What is the availability? How is it secured? With partnerships with our cloud services team at Kroger, a centralized organization that taught us their understanding of the cloud with cloud architecture principles, but really just gave us the tools to enable us to learn those pieces, as well as people on our security team who looked at the lens of these services with security. We put together a cohesive model that we'll talk about in the next slide. Along the bottom, the last piece is Kroger's very much an agile shop, but we weren't DevOps in a way that many teams would love to be, where we're doing multiple releases in a week, where we're doing great regression testing, where we have a unit test framework that everybody's familiar with. Make that ×2 with our data organizations who are relying on tools that have been built in-house for the last 20 years or so with our data warehousing group and our operational data source groups. So bringing in that modernization effort was a real big target for us. Using services like GitHub, Artifactory, Terraform, and DevOps, we found some people who are really interested in these technologies to help us along that journey and making our infrastructure available, but also our data available when it comes to the SQL Server, when it comes to the Python code that Andy had mentioned. And finally, partnering with external applications like Krogerpedia, our enterprise data catalog solution, to drive configurations. One of the things that was the core to doing this process at Kroger Scale was making sure that we got as configuration based for our development as possible. And those configurations should be simple enough that anybody who wants to access Kroger data can utilize them. So that, Andy, let's jump to the architecture. This is very much an R chart, and I will break it down as best as I can, starting from the far left. Kroger has data sources ranging from mainframe systems that were built back in the 70s all the way to the latest and greatest technologies, Confluent Kafka, NoSQL databases, graph databases, and all of these have unique connectivity concerns. What we've done is create that Krogerpedia framework where a centralized team builds a connector to, let's say, event hubs that lands in our data lake or is provided via a streaming service we call DESP, a domain event streaming platform. So depending on your needs, whether you're a streaming or a batch use case, we serve you equally. The centralized team builds the connector along with Krogerpedia building how you configure that connector and what the rules of the data are. This turns into a multi-step process where you need people who are very smart at understanding how to connect things, how to draw the lines on the screen, as well as people who understand the data. So the ACID compliance comes in big here, where you talk about what are our keys, how do we deduplicate, how do we handle slowly changing dimensions, how do we handle full reloads to the platform. So what we ended up building is a 4-layer lake where we ingest raw data, and it's held in its initial state on how we ingested it. We prep it for the ETL process. This was especially for large data sets. If we didn't want to have to go back and get into Delta again, we had it available for a merge process. A refine layer, which is really a representation of our source system. So this is where traditional data lakes tended to end. You know, you had your representative source system, and then you did your curation as one-offs into edge nodes. That curation is core to what we do. The company has grown to rely on what was our enterprise data warehouse, and we wanted to give them a next-gen data warehouse where they trusted the insights for product, for supply chain, for merchandising, and they could use those across many domains. A lot of people use a node-based approach to this, but we chose to keep it central for a myriad of reasons, but mostly because of the governance process. Lakes can get way out of control without having an appropriate governance model around that data and certification of those data sets. So keeping all that central, but enabling teams to deliver data to that central location is how we've modeled that. So that's how you move to the left. To the left, you have teams working in a subscription that has provisioned resources. So I'll pause there for a second and talk about these provisioned resources. Kroger, again, 500,000 people, definitely not all in IT and definitely not all in the business, but those people need a way to get into Azure without having to know all the moving parts and pieces about availability, about security. They just want to get in and develop with this data. So in partnership with our data management core team, we built out services to allow our consumers, those personas Andy shared before, access to that data without really needing to know the nuts and bolts of Azure. They get a Databricks workspace and they're ready to hit the ground running. They're connected to their Hive Metastore. They're connected to the data lake. They have some security around it in the form of Key Vault and storage. But really, they're allowed to iterate and move fast through this process. And eventually, they get to a point where they're comfortable with their results, and they can pass that either on to Power BI or to Synapse for SQL-like querying. The Synapse piece for us is very important to enable the persona that is a power user of SQL, but doesn't have the time or doesn't have the ability to learn how to get into Databricks, how to do PySpark, how to do R. So we really want to enable both those personas together. So we're moving from left to right. Now let's move to the bottom in the configuration. One of the things my team has been really interested in doing is providing common data engineering functions to the developers, both on the core side that we call our runway and the user side. So what we've come up with is a common library of data engineering functions to handle some of those things that we talked about earlier. What kind of aggregations you're doing, how to handle slowly changing dimensions. We have a connector that replicates a Delta table directly into Synapse to make that process easier for people. All of these common data engineering functions need to be maintained, and that's where the DevOps comes in, is where we're pioneering a concept of Kroger sourcing, and that's pioneering for Kroger, not for the United States, but pioneering this at Kroger where anybody can contribute back to these libraries, have their code reviewed and pushed, and now they have features available. Another really, really big part about making this whole thing Kroger scale. So Andy, I think that's pretty good.
So I guess as talking through that, Brandon, since we're in the dev track, can you talk about what we have automated today with infrastructure as code versus what we have in the roadmap?
So Kroger has a very strict policy on automating everything. There's some things that have been very hard, but all of our infrastructure is automated via Terraform, so no bit of infrastructure goes to the cloud. The same with our pipelines that pull data into our landing area or directly into the data lake. Those are all done via configuration and automated. What hasn't been automated yet and what is on our roadmap are more services around the data as a service platform, automating their data factories, automating scheduling, automating direct pulls to the Synapse. All of those are still manual coding processes. And so the things that we really want to focus on in the next part are our user platform services while still hardening the observability of this entire platform.
Great. All right, well, let me jump out here. Not sure the best way to take questions, but let's see if we've got any out there.
Great, that was awesome, guys. I do not see any questions in the chat or in the Q&A. There is a bit of a delay from our streaming. Okay. So if you have anything else, we'll wait and see if there are any that come through.
Awesome. Well, obviously we set this up to be a little more interactive. If anybody does have questions, and obviously we're logged in, we've got our profile set up. So if anybody, wants to take questions offline as well, we're certainly open to that.
It's weird from being a consumer of Kroger to hear all this back end stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's there is no shortage of excitement on any given day.
I bet. I was thinking about you guys I was picking up my click list a couple of weeks ago, and they had a glitch, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can just imagine what you guys are going through on the back end when things go crazy. And how many stores do you have in Ohio?
In Ohio, it's a couple hundred at least.
Yeah. Could you imagine? Well, you
Yeah.
you don't have to imagine it. You're living it every day.
Yeah, what gets really interesting is we just at our scale. So obviously we're a massive grocer, but we've got a huge online digital business. We're one of the world's largest manufacturers. We're one of the world's largest pharmacists. Like, all of these things create different levels of nuance and complexity to the solutions we deliver. So, the easy example, the pharmacy work, figuring out how do you secure an environment that you can co-mingle information without exposing any kind of HIPAA information along the way. Just massive amounts of complexity and regulation that we need to think through as we take each step in the journey.
Yeah, you just can't say, that's a great idea, let's do it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, to build on what Andy said, our data lakehouse is supposed to be democratized data for all. So some of the challenges we face are taking that HIPAA data and cleansing it in a way that makes it available for common use, while still maintaining the spirit of all the regulations and keeping on top of those regulations as they change.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Crazy world. So we have a question from Jacob Wilson. What tools in Azure or outside of Azure do you use for observability monitoring? I saw log analytics, but was curious if there were any others.
It's a good question. Kroger has partnered with ServiceNow in the cloud. We also use Infra on-prem for alerting. We're using Power BI actually for some of our dashboards, and we're going to continue to grow that so that our leadership, like Andy, when he hears things like click list is down from our customers, he can go see whether we're the cause or not. So that's very important to us. But ServiceNow alerts our team when something's going to go wrong through this process. Some of the other things we use around observability that are tangentially involved are turning on a lot of the logging for the storage accounts. In ADLS Gen 2, there's an advanced logging feature where you can see all the logs that are coming across. Now, those logs go in to figure out who's using what data sets, and if there are data sets we need to have deprecated. They also go to QRadar from a security perspective, so they can be monitored for any external threats that are going on. So the observability is pretty big for us, both not from making sure the platform's stable, but also a security perspective to make sure that we don't have any outside access to our data assets.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if we have additional questions. I don't see anything yet.
So I guess I'll help out if people are going to come review this video afterwards. Some of the process things that we don't really have a slide for because the people we've presented to have been on this Kroger journey, but recommendations from me are always start small, take a thin slice, so a domain or a subset of that domain, and take it from the beginning of your process to the end. We didn't start with 5 to 10 connectors. We started with 1 connector and got that correct from start to finish. That was our flat file connector and our landing zone in ADLS. Also, grow the talent that you have. Data isn't something that somebody off the street, even with this Azure experience, can know right off the top of their heads. So bringing in partners to look at your data and to manage, to help you understand where the blemishes are really important. So giving them the tools to provide you the feedback on your platform are 2 really big keys to success in building this kind of model.
Yeah, and I'd say along with that, if we look at our overall approach to funding this work and driving it forward in the enterprise, we can build the greatest platform in the world, but if nobody's using it, it doesn't matter. So we have to build those partnerships with our business areas, with our dev teams, and get that buy-in early, and not only get the buy-in, but get them to vocalize it, because we're obviously invested in this and we're selling our own journey, but we need others to basically talk about the benefits that they're seeing. And we've had a lot of that here recently, which has, been a big shot in the arm for us as far as advancing this forward. Again, if we live in an ecosystem where people understand basic business intelligence and reporting, but we know that is not the world we are going to operate by, now or into the future, we have to build those component parts and execute in a way that has true measurable business value, so that we can keep, adding layers of complexity and, true delivery and execution along the way.
Thank you. We have another question from Rodney Kendall. What kind of contingencies do you have in place when local stores have power or internet failures to maintain business continuity?
You want me to take that one, Brandon?
You're as qualified as I am for that one.
Yeah, so this gets into a little bit of the weeds with our operations, and I don't know all of the complexity with what we've got at the store. So we basically have a virtual store architecture from a systems perspective that has redundancy operating in the store. So effectively an advanced ecosystem. I believe we've got power backups at just about everywhere. At most of our stores. That does not mean that everything is fail-proof. So we just had a massive windstorm that kind of blew through Ohio here. I guess that was Saturday. A number of stores went offline as a result of those power outages. And obviously that creates massive food loss for us when we've got things in refrigerated in freezers and refrigerated areas that, if they're out for so long, then obviously we have to throw the product away. So, from a systems perspective, we leverage our virtual store architecture to keep things going. From a power perspective, there is some power redundancy, but I think it varies based on store configuration.
And one of the things you may see in the news that is very heartwarming to me is we have mobile pharmacies that go to places that are hard hit by events like hurricanes, that service customers and make sure that they have the medicines they need if their Kroger is down. So for us, that mobile pharmacy is a way we make sure we serve our customers and keep the lights on without needing the store to be on.
Yeah, I'll say that, that's one of the things that makes me proud to work here is when there is a major hurricane in the south or in the east, and we'll basically mobilize our entire trucking and logistics area to get products, like bottled water to those areas in need. So it is amazing the scale of the giant machine when it's put to that great use, and you see, everybody stack hands and mobilize to go address those concerns.
Thanks, guys. I don't see any other questions yet. I know I love my Kroger. I think you guys are outstanding. All right. We want to, I can close the session if you like.
Okay.
How are you feeling?
Again, if anybody wants to reach out offline through the app, via email, however you want to engage with us, feel free. We're certainly open to answering any additional questions as well.
Yeah, we appreciate you. I'll go ahead and close the session. So thank you, Anderson and Brandon. Special thanks to Gigamon, our featured sponsor for this session. Remember to complete the survey for each session by finding the link in My Agenda, Session Descriptions. By participating in this survey, you may make your voice heard and are helping shape the future of Technology First events. Thank you for taking the time to fill out the survey. And now it's time for a 15-minute break. Use this time to grab a snack, visit exhibitors, and explore the event platform. There are game codes you can earn by exploring the app. So go to the Event Game tab to learn more. The game code for attending this session is Azure, A-Z-U-R-E. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. And thank you again, Anderson and Brandon and Kroger. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Escape.